My name is Sophia, and at 32, I thought I was finally on the cusp of having the perfect family Christmas dinner. I was brimming with exciting news. I'd just gotten engaged to the most incredible man, Daniel, and earned a promotion at work, a goal I'd relentlessly pursued for 3 long years. I was so eager to share it all, hoping that this time, just this once, my mother, Eleanor, might finally look at me with pride. But what unfolded that night shattered everything between us forever. And in retrospect, it was precisely what I needed. Before I recount the full story of that fateful Christmas evening, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share your location in the comments below. And if this narrative resonates with you, do hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of self-discovery and standing firm. Trust me, what my mother uttered next was shocking, but my reply left her utterly speechless. Growing up, I was perpetually the invisible middle child in a family where being in the middle meant being overlooked. My older brother, Julian, was the undisputed golden boy, the one who could do no wrong in Eleanor's eyes. He's a doctor now, and she never misses an opportunity to remind anyone within earshot. My younger sister, Charlotte, was the cherished baby, the delicate princess who effortlessly got away with everything and blossomed into a successful lawyer. And then there was me, Sophia, perpetually caught in the gravitational pull between them, desperately striving to earn even a sliver of the attention and affection they seemed to garner so effortlessly. From the moment I grasped the intricate dance of family dynamics, I knew I had to double my efforts for half the recognition. While Julian was lauded for bringing home B's, I had to maintain straight A's just to receive a fleeting nod of acknowledgement. When Charlotte threw dramatic tantrums and broke cherished items, it was deemed cute, her way of expressing herself. Yet if I so much as raised my voice, I was instantly labeled disrespectful, in dire need of an attitude adjustment. I vividly recall spending countless hours in high school juggling part-time jobs at the local grocery store and tutoring younger students. Not because we needed the money, but because I harbored the naive hope that if I contributed financially, my parents might finally recognize my worth. I painstakingly saved every penny to buy Eleanor flowers on Mother's Day, elegant jewelry for her birthday, and thoughtful Christmas gifts I'd spend weeks deliberating over. Julian and Charlotte, meanwhile, would simply grab something last minute from the mall. And somehow, their hastily chosen presents always elicited the biggest smiles and the longest, most effusive hugs. College, I believed, would be my fresh start, my chance to truly prove myself in a field I genuinely loved. I chose marketing, captivated by its blend of creativity and strategic thinking, the art of crafting a story that connects with people and inspires action. But when I announced my major to my family, Eleanor's face visibly crumpled, as if I'd just declared I was dropping out entirely. "Marketing!" she scoffed, her voice dripping with disappointment. "That's not a real career, Sophia. That's just playing with pretty pictures and slogans. Why can't you be more like Julian and choose something that actually helps people? Or like Charlotte, something that demands real intelligence and makes a difference in the world?" Her words stung more deeply than I let on at the time. But I pushed through, graduated with honors, and secured my first job at a boutique marketing firm downtown. I meticulously worked my way up, volunteering for extra projects, staying late, arriving early, constantly proving myself. Every small victory, every client I secured, every campaign that soared, I'd eagerly call home, bursting with news. The conversations invariably ended the same way. "That's nice, dear. Did I tell you Julian just got published in another medical journal?" Or, "Charlotte just won another high-profile case. She's truly making a name for herself." 4 years, I stubbornly persisted. I sent cards for every holiday, called weekly, meticulously remembered birthdays and anniversaries. When my parents relocated to their new house at 26, I sacrificed my entire vacation time to paint walls and organize boxes, while my siblings were far too engrossed in their important careers to lift a finger. I dog-sat their German Shepherd whenever they traveled, despite my severe allergies, spending entire weekends sneezing and medicating. Last spring, when my father, James, required emergency gallbladder surgery, I was the one who took time off work to drive him to appointments and sit with Eleanor in the waiting room for 6 agonizing hours. Julian was in surgery himself that day, and Charlotte was in court. Yet, somehow, I was later lectured about my failure to provide more frequent updates to them both. The worst part wasn't even the sheer lack of recognition. It was the relentless comparison, the insidious way every conversation invariably circled back to how much more successful, more attractive, more accomplished my siblings were. Family dinners devolved into grueling exercises in endurance, sitting there, listening to endless hymns of praise for achievements that, truthfully, weren't any more impressive than my own, but were elevated to Nobel Prize victories simply because they emanated from the Golden Children. But this past autumn, pieces of my own life finally began to slot into place. Daniel and I had been together for 2 years, and he proposed during a breathtaking weekend escape to the mountains in October. The ring was elegantly simple, yet utterly perfect, and more importantly, he saw me in a way my family never had. He celebrated my professional triumphs, championed my creative endeavors, and never once made me feel like I had to compete for his attention or approval. Around the same time, my company promoted me to Senior Marketing Coordinator, a role that brought a significant salary increase and the thrilling opportunity to lead my own team. It was everything I had tirelessly worked towards, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt a deep, resonant pride in my accomplishments. I couldn't wait to share both pieces of news with my family at Christmas, clinging to the hope that this time, things would be different. Christmas morning dawned precisely as it always did at my childhood home on Maple Street. The house was a time capsule, adorned exactly as it had been for the past 2 decades. White lights on the stately evergreen in the living room, a collection of red and gold ornaments Eleanor had amassed over the years, and the same angelic tree topper that had crowned our Christmases since I was 5. The air was fragrant with the comforting scent of cinnamon rolls and brewing coffee, while Christmas carols played softly from the venerable stereo system in the corner. I arrived around 10 that morning, my arms laden with meticulously wrapped presents, my heart thrumming with nervous excitement. Daniel was spending Christmas with his own family in Portland, but we planned our celebration for his return. I'd been carrying my engagement ring in my purse for 2 months, determined to announce it in person, not over the phone. My father, James, greeted me at the door with one of his comforting bear hugs. James had always been the more emotionally accessible parent, the one who remembered to inquire about my job and genuinely listened to my responses. "There's my marketing genius!" he exclaimed, taking the presents from my arms. "How's the new position treating you?" I lit up. "Actually, Dad, I have some truly exciting news to share with everyone." "Oh, really? Can't wait to hear it, sweetheart." Eleanor appeared in the doorway, wearing the very red cashmere sweater I'd bought her for her birthday last year. Her gaze swept over me, a practiced instrument of critique, finding fault before I'd even uttered a greeting. "Sophia, what on earth are you wearing? That green dress makes you look utterly washed out. Didn't I tell you that color clashes with your complexion? And your hair looks like you just rolled out of bed. Merry Christmas to you too, Mom." I managed, forcing a smile. "I actually spent an hour on my hair this morning." "Well, you should have spent 2, she retorted, turning back toward the kitchen. "Charlotte looks absolutely stunning in her new navy suit. You should ask her where she shops." My sister Charlotte was already in the living room, looking indeed impeccable in a tailored navy outfit that likely cost more than my monthly rent. She worked for a prestigious downtown law firm and possessed the wardrobe to match. Julian was ensconced on the couch, expensive watch gleaming, designer sweater perfectly draped, scrolling through his phone, checking messages from the hospital. "Look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," Charlotte remarked with a dismissive smirk. "We've been waiting to start presents." "I'm literally 5 minutes late because I stopped for gas," I replied, but no one seemed to be listening. The gift exchange unfolded exactly as I'd anticipated. Julian presented everyone with gift cards, clearly last-minute purchases, but they were from high-end stores, prompting Eleanor to gush about his thoughtfulness and generosity. Charlotte had gifted our parents a lavish weekend getaway to a fancy spa resort, which earned her 20 minutes of effusive praise and excited planning discussions. I, meanwhile, had spent weeks selecting personalized gifts for everyone, a rare vintage book for James, a beautiful leather briefcase for Charlotte with her initials elegantly engraved, and a custom photo album for my parents, filled with digitized and printed family pictures from the past decade that I'd painstakingly restored myself. "Oh, How nice, Eleanor said, flipping through the photo album quickly, her tone perfunctory. This must have taken you some time. I spent about 40 hours on it, I stated. I had to scan all the old photos, restore some of the damaged ones, then design the layouts, and that's sweet, dear. Julian, show everyone that magnificent new watch your colleague gave you. And just like that, the conversation abruptly shifted. James squeezed my shoulder and whispered, This is truly beautiful, Sophia. Thank you. But the moment, for me, had already vanished. As morning bled into afternoon, more family members arrived. My Aunt Clara and Uncle Thomas, my cousins Liam and Olivia, and my grandmother Agnes. The house hummed with laughter and conversation, and I found myself gravitating toward the kitchen, helping Eleanor with dinner preparations as I always did. The turkey needs to come out in 20 minutes, she instructed, without looking up from the potatoes she was mashing. And someone needs to set the table. Where's Charlotte? She's in the living room, talking to Grandma Agnes. Well, she shouldn't have to worry about kitchen work. She worked so hard during the week. I bit my tongue. I worked just as hard during the week, but somehow, that never factored into these domestic calculations. As dinner time approached, my nerves tightened. I'd planned to make my announcement during dessert, when everyone would be relaxed and in a good mood. I kept touching the ring box in my purse, reminding myself that this was good news, happy news, the kind of news that should knit families closer. But as I watched Eleanor light up every time Julian mentioned his latest groundbreaking case or Charlotte recounted her recent courtroom victory, I began to wonder if I was simply setting myself up for yet another crushing disappointment. Dinner was served at 3 sharp, a tradition as immutable as Christmas itself for as long as I could remember. The dining room table was set with Eleanor's finest china, the same pattern she'd used for every special occasion since my childhood. Grandma Agnes sat at one end, my father at the other, and the rest of us filled in the sides according to an unspoken hierarchy that invariably placed me between my youngest cousin and the empty chair where my grandfather used to sit. The conversation flowed effortlessly, navigating familiar currents I'd heard 100 times before, Julian's new medical practice expanding beyond his wildest projections, Charlotte's recent promotion to junior partner at her prestigious law firm, my cousin Olivia's meticulous wedding planning for next summer. I participated when directly addressed, chuckled politely at Uncle Thomas's rather predictable jokes, and complimented Aunt Clara's new haircut, all while patiently waiting for the opportune moment to unveil my own news. So, Sophia, Grandma Agnes inquired during a lull in the conversation, her voice gentle, are you still working at that little advertising company downtown? Marketing company, Grandma, I corrected gently. And yes, I am. Actually, I have some exciting news about that. Before I could elaborate, Eleanor interjected, cutting me off with surgical precision. Sophia thinks making pretty pictures for businesses is the same as having a real career. I keep telling her she should go back to school for something more substantial, like nursing or teaching. Marketing is a real career, Mom, I stated, striving to keep my voice even. It's actually a field that demands a lot of strategy and analysis. I just got promoted to senior coordinator, which means I'll be leading my own team. Oh, that's wonderful, honey. Aunt Clara interjected kindly. Congratulations. Thank you, I replied, then, gathering my courage, added, and actually, I have even bigger news than that. I reached into my purse and extracted the small velvet box, my heart thrumming a frantic rhythm I was certain everyone could hear. This was it, the moment I'd been rehearsing for weeks. Daniel proposed, I announced, opening the box to reveal the exquisite solitaire ring inside. We're engaged. The reaction wasn't quite what I'd hoped for. A brief, awkward silence descended, followed by polite, almost perfunctory congratulations from most of the table. My father's face broke into a genuine, beaming smile, and my grandmother reached over to squeeze my hand, but Eleanor's expression remained unchanged, almost bored. When did this happen? Charlotte asked, her tone flat. In October. We went to the mountains for a weekend, and he proposed during a hike to this beautiful overlook. It was perfect. October, Eleanor echoed, her voice sharp. You've been engaged for 2 months, and you're just telling us now? I wanted to tell you in person, as a family. Well, that's just typical of you, Sophia. Always so secretive, always keeping things to yourself. No wonder we never know what's going on in your life. I felt the familiar sting of criticism, thinly veiled as concern. I'm not secretive, Mom. I call every week. I just wanted this to be special. What does Daniel do again? Julian inquired, though I told him at least 3 times in previous conversations. He's a high school English teacher. A teacher? Eleanor repeated the word, dripping with barely veiled disdain. Well, I suppose that's stable employment, at least. The way she uttered it made her unspoken thoughts abundantly clear. Not impressive enough. Not successful enough. Not good enough for her daughter. Never mind that Daniel was profoundly kind, fiercely intelligent, wonderfully funny, and treated me like I was the most important person in his entire world. He's a wonderful man, my grandmother, Agnes, interjected firmly. When do we get to meet him properly? Soon, I hope. He's with his family in Portland for Christmas, but we're planning to have dinner with everyone next month. I hope he knows what he's getting into, Charlotte remarked with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. Sophia's always been the difficult one in the family. I'm not difficult, I protested, but Eleanor was already nodding in agreement. Sophia has always been challenging, she declared, as if I weren't sitting right there. She's never quite figured out how to make things easy on herself or anyone else. Her words hit me like a physical blow, a familiar ache deep in my chest, but I tried to shake it off. This was meant to be a celebration, a moment of profound joy. I couldn't allow them to ruin it. Well, I think it's wonderful news, James interjected, raising his glass of wine. To Sophia and Daniel, may you be very happy together. A few people half-heartedly raised their glasses, but the moment felt forced, awkward, a strained ripple in the otherwise indifferent conversation. The topic quickly shifted, leaving me sitting there, the velvet ring box still in my trembling hands, feeling smaller and more insignificant than ever. As dessert was being served, Eleanor launched into a meticulous account of Julian's latest professional triumphs. He'd been prominently featured in a medical journal, invited to speak at a prestigious conference in Chicago, and was being seriously considered for a coveted position at the university hospital. Each accomplishment was embellished with glowing detail, Eleanor's pride practically radiating across the table, a blinding beacon for all to witness. And Charlotte, she continued without missing a beat, just won the biggest case of her career. The settlement was in the 6 figures, and the senior partners are already talking about fast-tracking her to full partner. That's amazing. I genuinely offered, meaning it. Congratulations, Charlotte. Thanks, she murmured, but her attention had already drifted back to her phone. I sat there, listening to the torrent of praise heaped upon my siblings, waiting for someone, anyone, to circle back to my engagement or my promotion. But it never happened. It was as if I'd never spoken, as if my news didn't matter enough to warrant more than a few fleeting seconds of attention. That's when Eleanor looked directly at me, her gaze piercing, and uttered the words that would irrevocably alter everything between us forever. You know, Sophia, she began, her voice falsely sweet, I've been thinking about this engagement of yours, and I have to be honest. I'm worried about Daniel. I mean, what kind of man proposes to you? The table fell silent. Even my cousins looked up from their phones. What do you mean? I asked, though a sickening dread told me I already knew. Well, let's be realistic here. You're 32. You work in a job that barely pays the bills. You live in that tiny apartment, and you've never really accomplished anything significant. You're the most useless child we have. I just hope Daniel realizes what he's signing up for before it's too late. The silence that followed was deafening, a vacuum in the air that seemed to suck the very breath from the room. I could feel every pair of eyes at the table impaled upon me, waiting to see how I would react. Aunt Clara looked utterly horrified. My father was shaking his head slowly, a silent tremor of disbelief. Even Julian and Charlotte seemed momentarily stunned by the sheer cruelty of the comment. But for the very first time in my life, instead of shrinking back and internalizing the blow, instead of fabricating excuses or attempting to laugh it off, I felt something entirely different surge within me. It was anger. Yes, a searing heat, but more than that, it was an electrifying clarity. It was 32 years of suppressed frustration and aching hurt, finally finding its voice, a torrent of truth refusing to be damned. I stood up slowly, my hands trembling not with fear, but with the raw power of emotion, and met Eleanor's eyes directly. "Then stop calling me when you need money," I declared, my voice steady, clear, each word a hammer blow. Her face, flushed with confidence moments before, visibly fell. The silence that followed my words was so absolute that I could hear the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway and the faint, distant strains of Christmas music still playing in the living room. Eleanor's face contorted, shifting from an expression of confident superiority to something I'd never witnessed before, genuine shock, mixed with what looked like pure panic. "What are you talking about?" she managed, her voice suddenly devoid of all its earlier authority, a mere whisper. "I'm talking about the $1,500 I've been sending you every month for the past 2 years to cover your car payments because Dad's business was struggling," I explained, my voice growing stronger with each revelation. "I'm talking about the $3,000 I gave you last spring when he needed surgery, and your insurance wouldn't cover all the costs. I'm talking about the $2,000 I sent to help pay for Charlotte's bar exam fees because she'd already blown her trust fund on that lavish trip to Europe." I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, opening my banking app with fingers that, surprisingly, remained steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Want to see the receipts?" I continued, holding up the screen for all to see. "Because I have them all right here. Every single transfer, every single check, every emergency loan that somehow never got paid back." Aunt Clara was staring at me, her mouth slightly agape. Uncle Thomas had lowered his fork, listening with rapt intensity. Grandmother Agnes was nodding slowly, a knowing glint in her eyes, as if the scattered pieces of a lifelong puzzle were finally clicking into place. "Sophia, dear," James began, his voice laced with confusion and concern, but I wasn't finished. "Remember last Christmas, when Julian's student loans went into default because his new practice wasn't bringing in enough money yet?" I pressed on, turning to my stunned brother. "Who do you think paid those off? It wasn't Mom and Dad, because they were still recovering from Dad's medical bills. It was me. $4,000 that I'd been saving for a down payment on a house." Julian's face had gone utterly pale. "Sophia, I didn't know." "Of course, you didn't know," I shot back, my voice rising. "Because Mom made me promise not to tell anyone. She said it would embarrass you, and that I should just consider it my contribution to the family." My contribution, as if I haven't been contributing my entire adult life. I turned back to Eleanor, who was opening and closing her mouth, attempting to form words that wouldn't come. "You want to know what kind of man proposes to someone like me?" I demanded, my voice ringing with newfound power. "The kind who sees that I've been single-handedly keeping this family financially afloat while working my supposedly meaningless job and living in my supposedly pathetic apartment. The kind who recognizes that maybe, just maybe, I've been sacrificing my own financial security and dreams to take care of everyone else." "I never asked you to," Eleanor began weakly, her voice a reedy whisper. "You absolutely did ask," I exclaimed, my voice cracking with years of pent-up frustration. "You called me crying about the car payments. You called me panicking about Dad's surgery. You called me begging for help with Charlotte's fees. And every single time I helped. Because that's what families do. But apparently, that's what the useless child does, while the successful ones get all the credit and none of the responsibility." Charlotte finally spoke up, her voice small, barely a whisper. "I didn't know you paid for my bar exam." "Of course you didn't, Charlotte, because I wasn't supposed to tell you. Just like I wasn't supposed to tell anyone about the money I've been lending Mom and Dad, or the payment I made on Julian's loans, or the countless other times I've bailed this family out of financial trouble." I opened my banking app again and began reading actual numbers and dates, my voice unwavering. September 15th, 2022, $1,500 to Eleanor Walsh for car payment. October 3rd, $1,500 to Eleanor Walsh for car payment. November 7th, $2,000 to James Walsh for medical expenses. December 19th, $1,500 to Eleanor Walsh for car payment. My father was staring at Eleanor with an expression I'd never seen before, a chilling blend of confusion and raw anger. "Eleanor, is this true?" "It's not what it sounds like," she stammered quickly, her facade crumbling. "Sophia was just helping out temporarily while we got back on our feet." "Temporarily?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it, only a biting sarcasm. It's been 2 years, Mom. 2 years of monthly payments. 2 years of me prioritizing your financial stability over my own. 2 years of me living paycheck to paycheck while you drove around in a car I was paying for, complaining about how unsuccessful your useless daughter is. Grandmother Agnes reached across the table and firmly clasped my hand. Honey, why didn't you tell any of us about this? Because I thought if I could just help enough, if I could just prove my value to this family in some tangible way, maybe I'd finally earn the love and respect that Julian and Charlotte seem to get for free. I explained, the tears I've been holding back for years, finally overflowing. But they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of release, of liberation, of finally speaking a profound truth I'd carried alone for so long. You want to know what Daniel sees in me? I continued, my voice growing stronger, imbued with a newfound authority. He sees someone who's been working 2 jobs to support her family while they belittle her career. He sees someone who's been giving up her own dreams and financial goals to make sure everyone else in her family is okay. He sees someone who's been the real backbone of his family while being treated like she's worthless. Julian was shaking his head, his face a mask of shock and regret. Sophia, I had no idea. If I'd known you were the one who paid off my loans, I would have. You'd what, Julian? I cut him off, my voice sharp. You'd have treated me with basic respect. You'd have defended me when Mom made her snide comments. Because that's all I ever wanted. Not gratitude, not praise. Just basic human decency. I turned to Charlotte, who was staring down at her plate, unable to meet my gaze. And you, Charlotte? Do you have any idea how many times I've covered for you? Not just financially, but in every other way. When you were too hungover to help Mom move, who do you think spent her weekend packing boxes? When you were too busy to visit Dad in the hospital, who do you think sat with him for hours? Sophia, James said quietly, his voice heavy with sorrow. I'm so sorry. I had no idea your mother was asking you for money. She made me promise not to tell you. She said it would hurt your pride, and that as the most financially stable one, it was my responsibility to help. Funny how I went from being the most useless to the most financially stable depending on what she needed from me. I retorted, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Eleanor finally found her voice again, though it was strained. You're being dramatic, Sophia. Families help each other. That's what we do. No, Mom. What families do is support each other emotionally and treat each other with respect. What you do is take my money while telling everyone how worthless I am. What you do is use me as a financial safety net while treating me like an embarrassment. I stood up, pushing my chair back with a decisive scrape against the floor. Well, congratulations. You're about to find out exactly how useless I really am, because as of today, the Bank of Sophia is permanently closed. The aftermath of my revelation was immediate and utterly chaotic. As soon as I announced that I was done being the family's financial safety net, multiple conversations erupted around the table simultaneously. Aunt Clara was demanding to know how long this had been going on. Uncle Thomas was pressing my father on what he knew about the money. Grandmother Agnes was looking at Eleanor with an expression of profound disappointment. Sophia, wait! Eleanor exclaimed, standing up as I gathered my purse and coat. Let's talk about this privately. There's no need to air our family business in front of everyone. Our family business. I turned back to face her, my voice unwavering. You mean the family business where you humiliate me in front of these very same people every chance you get? The family business where you announce to everyone that I'm the most useless child you have? I think they're entitled to know the truth about how this family really operates. You're being vindictive, she accused, but her voice was shaking, betraying her crumbling composure. I'm being honest, I stated, my gaze piercing. For the first time in my adult life, I'm being completely honest about what's been happening in this family. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why. My cousin Olivia spoke up from across the table. Sophia, are you serious about the money? You've really been supporting them financially. Dead serious, I affirmed. I can show you bank statements going back years if you want proof. My father was staring at Eleanor with a mixture of confusion and anger. Eleanor, we need to talk right now. Not in front of everyone, she hissed, her face a mask of desperation. Why not? I challenged. my voice ringing with clarity. You had no problem discussing Sophia's failures in front of everyone. You had no problem announcing to the entire table that she's useless. So why is it suddenly inappropriate to discuss the truth? Julian finally spoke, his voice quiet, filled with a nascent remorse. Sophia, about my student loans. I genuinely didn't know. I thought Mom and Dad had helped me out. I know you didn't know, I said, and I truly meant it. None of you knew, because I was specifically told not to tell you. But Julian, can I ask you something? In all the years we've been adults, have you ever once asked me if I needed help with anything? Have you ever inquired about my finances, my career struggles, my personal life beyond the bare minimum? He was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally admitted, his gaze fixed on the table. I guess I assumed you were doing fine. You assumed I was doing fine because it was easier than actually paying attention to my life. I retorted, the words sharp with years of truth. Just like it was easier for Charlotte to assume someone else would handle the family emergencies, and easier for Mom to assume I'd always be there to bail everyone out while she criticized everything about me. Charlotte finally looked up from her plate. Her eyes narrowed in a mix of confusion and anger. I don't understand why you didn't just say no if you didn't want to help. Because I did want to help, I exclaimed, my voice cracking with emotion. I wanted to help because I love this family, despite everything. I wanted to help because I thought maybe if I proved my value in some tangible way, I'd finally be treated like I mattered. But I see now that no amount of financial support was ever going to change how you all see me. Grandmother Agnes cleared her throat, and the room went completely silent. When Agnes Walsh spoke, people listened. She'd been the matriarch of our family for as long as I could remember, and her opinion carried immense weight with everyone. Eleanor, she began, her voice stern in a way I rarely heard, laced with profound disappointment. I am deeply disappointed in you. This young woman has been sacrificing her own financial security to help this family, and you've been treating her like she's worthless. That's not just ungrateful, it's cruel. Mother, you don't understand the whole situation, Eleanor stammered, attempting to regain control. I understand enough. Agnes cut her off, her voice unwavering. I understand that Sophia has been working 2 jobs to support herself and apparently half this family, while you've been telling everyone who would listen that she's not good enough. I understand that she just announced her engagement, which should be one of the happiest moments of her life, and instead of celebrating with her, you used it as an opportunity to tear her down. The room was silent except for the sound of Eleanor's rapid, ragged breathing. I'd never seen her called out so directly by her own mother before. And another thing, Grandma Agnes continued, her gaze firm. I've watched this girl grow up, and she's never been anything but kind, generous, and hardworking. If she's the most useless child you have, Eleanor, then you have no idea how to measure a person's worth. Aunt Clara nodded emphatically. I have to agree with Mom. Sophia, I had no idea you were dealing with all of this. I always wondered why you seemed so stressed during family gatherings. I wasn't stressed, I said quietly, the words weighted with exhaustion. I was exhausted. Emotionally, financially, physically exhausted from trying to be enough for a family that had already decided I never would be. Eleanor made one last desperate attempt to regain control of the narrative. Sophia, you're making this sound much worse than it is. We're family. We help each other. And I never said you were worthless. You said I was the most useless child you have in front of everyone, after I just told you I was engaged. I retorted, my voice sharp. What exactly would you call that? She opened her mouth, but no words came out, only a strangled gasp. You know what, Mom? It doesn't matter anymore. I'm done trying to earn your approval. I'm done sacrificing my own happiness and financial security for people who don't even see me as a real person. I'm done being the family's safety net while being treated like the family disappointment. I walked toward the door, but turned back one last time, my eyes sweeping over their shocked faces. My wedding is going to be beautiful. Daniel and I are going to build a wonderful life together, and we're going to do it without the constant criticism and emotional manipulation that I've been accepting as normal for the past 32 years. Anyone who wants to be part of that life, with respect and kindness, is welcome. Anyone who doesn't can keep my phone number for emergencies, but don't expect me to answer. And with that, I walked out of my childhood home, leaving behind a table full of stunned faces and a mother who was finally experiencing what it felt like to be the one left speechless. The week following Christmas was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. My phone started ringing before I even made it home that evening, and it didn't cease for days. But for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't answering every call immediately. I wasn't dropping everything to manage other people's emotions or solve their problems. Daniel had flown back from Portland 2 days early when I called him crying from my car in my parents' driveway. He found me sitting on my couch at 11 that night, still in my Christmas dress, staring at my phone as it buzzed with incoming calls and text messages. "I can't believe I actually did that," I kept repeating, tears welling again. "I can't believe I finally said all of that out loud." "I can," he said, pulling me close. "I've been waiting for you to stand up to them for 2 years. I just didn't want to push, because I knew you had to get there on your own. But what if I was wrong? What if I was too harsh?" "Sophia," he said gently, looking into my eyes, "you've been paying your mother's car payment for 2 years while she told people you were useless. There's no universe in which you were too harsh." The messages began to pour in that night and continued for days. My father, James, called first, his voice heavy with what sounded like genuine regret. "Sophia, honey, I had no idea your mother was asking you for money. I'm so sorry. If I'd known." "Dad, it's not just about the money," I told him, my voice still raw. "It's about the way she's treated me my entire life. The money was just the final straw. I know, sweetheart. I've been thinking a lot about that since you left. And you're right. I should have stood up for you more over the years. I should have said something when she made those comments. It was the first real apology I'd ever received from anyone in my family, and it meant more than I could express." Julian called the next day. "Sophia, I feel terrible about the loan situation. I want to pay you back." "It's not about paying me back, Julian," I explained. "It's about the fact that for all these years, you've been perfectly happy to assume that someone else would handle family problems while you focused on your career. You never once asked if I needed help or support." "You're right," he said quietly. I guess I always saw you as the strong one, the one who had everything figured out." "I was the one who couldn't say no," I clarified. "There's a difference." Charlotte took 3 days to call, and when she did, she was predictably defensive. "I don't understand why you're being so dramatic about this, Sophia. Families help each other out. It's not like anyone forced you to give us money. Charlotte, do you remember what you said to me at dinner? You said I was the difficult one in the family. Do you have any idea how that felt, coming right after Mom called me useless?" "I was just joking around," she insisted. "It wasn't a joke to me. It never is. Do you realize that between you and Julian, I can't remember the last time either of you said something genuinely kind about me? The last time you supported me or celebrated something good happening in my life." She was quiet for a long moment. I guess I never thought about it that way. "That's the problem," I told her, my voice weary. "None of you think about it. You take my support for granted while treating me like I'm the burden." Eleanor, predictably, was the most persistent. She called 6 times on December 26th alone, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. "Sophia, this is ridiculous. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults. Sophia, you're being incredibly selfish. Your father is upset, and this is affecting the whole family. Sophia, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this attitude needs to stop. We're your family." On December 28th, she tried a different approach. "Sophia, honey, I think I may have spoken too harshly at dinner. Maybe we can work something out about the money situation." But it wasn't until December 30th that she finally called and said the words I'd been waiting 32 years to hear. "Sophia, I was wrong. I'm sorry." I almost didn't answer the phone. I'd been screening her calls for days, and Daniel had been encouraging me to take my time before engaging, but something about the 10th ring made me pick up. "Hello, Mom." "Sophia, thank God. Please don't hang up. I need to talk to you." "I'm listening. Your father and I have been talking, and I think I owe you an apology. A real one." I waited. What I said at dinner was unforgivable. "You're not useless. You're the opposite of useless. You've been, God, Sophia, you've been holding this family together, and I've been treating you terribly. It was the closest thing to a genuine apology I'd ever received from her, but I wasn't ready to let my guard down completely. Mom, it's not just what you said at dinner. It's been a pattern my entire life. The constant criticism, the comparisons to Julian and Charlotte, the way you dismiss my career and my accomplishments. I know, she said, and her voice was shaking. I know, and I don't have a good excuse for it. I think maybe I saw myself in you, and I was harder on you because of it. What do you mean? I was the middle child, too. I know what it's like to feel invisible. And instead of protecting you from that feeling, I think I made it worse. I think I pushed you harder because I wanted you to be stronger than I was. It wasn't a complete explanation, and it certainly wasn't an excuse, but it was the first time Eleanor had ever shown me any real vulnerability or self-awareness. The money stops, Mom. All of it. No more car payments, no more emergency loans, no more bailing anyone out. I understand. You're right to stop. We never should have put that burden on you. And the criticism stops, too, I continued firmly. I'm not going to tolerate being belittled anymore, especially in front of other people. Okay, I'll try to do better. Don't try, Mom. Do better. Because if you can't, then Daniel and I will build our life without this family's involvement. It was an ultimatum, but it felt necessary. For the first time in my life, I was setting real boundaries with consequences I was prepared to enforce. 3 months later, my life looked completely different. The constant financial stress was gone, replaced by something I'd never experienced before, actual savings. For the first time since college, I had money left over at the end of each month. Daniel and I opened a joint savings account and started planning not just our wedding, but our entire future together. The emotional change was even more dramatic. Without the constant weight of family drama and financial obligations, I felt lighter, more confident, more like myself. My performance at work improved noticeably once I wasn't distracted by family emergencies and guilt-inducing phone calls. My boss noticed the change and hinted at additional promotion opportunities coming up. "You seem different lately," she remarked during my quarterly review. "More focused, more assertive in meetings. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." I was doing something I'd never done before, prioritizing my own well-being. The family dynamics shifted dramatically once the financial safety net was removed. My father, James, it turned out, had been completely unaware of the extent to which Eleanor had been borrowing money from me. When he discovered the full scope of it, he was furious. 2 years, Eleanor. You've been taking money from our daughter for 2 years without telling me. They ended up going to financial counseling together, something that probably should have happened years earlier. James took a part-time consulting job to supplement their income, and Eleanor finally admitted they'd been living beyond their means. Julian and Charlotte, meanwhile, were forced to confront their own assumptions about family support. Julian called me 6 weeks after Christmas with an update that genuinely surprised me. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," he confessed. "About how I never asked if you needed help. And you're right. I was so focused on my own problems that I never considered you might have your own." "I appreciate you saying that, Julian. I want to do better," he continued. "And I want to start by asking, is there anything you need help with? Anything I can do to support you?" It was such a simple question, yet it was the first time any of my siblings had ever asked it. We ended up having a 2-hour conversation about my career goals, my relationship with Daniel, and my plans for the future. For the first time in our adult lives, Julian seemed genuinely interested in my life as a person, rather than just as a family obligation. Charlotte took longer to come around. She was still defensive about the money situation, and seemed to view my boundary setting as a personal attack, rather than a necessary change. But even she eventually started to shift her perspective, especially after a pointed conversation with our grandmother, Agnes. Agnes had apparently given both of my siblings quite the talking to about their treatment of me over the years. "Your sister has been sacrificing for this family while you two were building your careers," she told them bluntly. "The least you can do is treat her with the respect she deserves." My relationship with Eleanor remained the most complicated. She was clearly trying to change her behavior, but decades of ingrained patterns don't disappear overnight. She'd catch herself mid-criticism and apologize, or make a conscious effort to ask about my work in a way that didn't sound dismissive. It felt forced at first, but gradually, it began to feel more genuine. The real test came when Daniel and I started planning our wedding. I'd been dreading the inevitable commentary and attempts to control the process, but to my surprise, Eleanor mostly kept her opinions to herself. When she did offer suggestions, she prefaced them with phrases like, "Just an idea," or "Only if you think it would work." "I like the photographer you chose," she said during one of our planning sessions. "The samples you showed me are beautiful." It was such a normal, supportive comment that I almost didn't know how to respond. This was what healthy family interaction was supposed to look like. My father, James, on the other hand, threw himself into wedding planning with an enthusiasm I hadn't expected. He offered to help with costs, insisted on walking me down the aisle, and spent hours researching venues and vendors with me. It was as if he was trying to make up for years of standing by while Eleanor criticized me. "I'm so proud of you," he told me one afternoon as we sampled cakes at a bakery downtown. "Not just for standing up to your mother, but for building such a good life for yourself. Daniel's a lucky man." Coming from my father, those words meant everything. The biggest surprise was how many other family members reached out to support me once they learned the full story. My Aunt Clara started calling regularly just to check in. My cousin Olivia asked if she could help with wedding planning. Even some of my more distant relatives made efforts to connect with me in ways they never had before. "I always sensed there was tension," Aunt Clara explained one day, "but I never realized how bad it was. Your mother has always been intense, but I didn't know she was being so unfair to you." It turned out that several family members had noticed the dynamic over the years but hadn't felt comfortable intervening. My Christmas outburst had given them permission to finally address what they'd been seeing but ignoring. The most meaningful change, however, was in my relationship with Daniel's family. Without the constant drain of my own family's drama, I was able to invest more emotional energy in building genuine relationships with his parents and siblings. They welcomed me with an openness and warmth that I'd never experienced within my own familial circle. And for the first time, I understood what healthy family dynamics actually looked like. "Your family is so normal," I told Daniel after a Sunday dinner with his parents, where no one criticized anyone, and everyone seemed genuinely happy to be together. "Yours can be too," he said. "It just takes time and boundaries." He was right. Slowly, carefully, with clear expectations and consequences, some of my family relationships were beginning to heal. Not all of them, and not completely, but enough to give me profound hope that the future could indeed be different from the past. 6 months after that tumultuous Christmas dinner, Daniel and I were married in a small, intimate ceremony at a historic inn about an hour outside the city. The guest list was carefully curated, including only people who had shown genuine support for our relationship and respect for both of us as individuals. My father, James, walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes. My grandmother, Agnes, sat in the front row, beaming with unspeakable pride. Eleanor was there, too, dressed beautifully and behaving perfectly, but I could see the immense effort it was taking her to hold back her usual commentary. Julian and Charlotte both attended, and even seemed genuinely happy for us. But the people who mattered most were the ones who had supported me unconditionally, Daniel's family, who had embraced me from the very beginning, my Aunt Clara and cousin Olivia, who had become true sources of emotional solace, and my longtime friends, who had watched me struggle with family dynamics for years and were thrilled to see me finally standing up for myself. "You look radiant," my grandmother whispered as she hugged me after the ceremony. "Not just beautiful, but truly happy. That's what I've been waiting to see." During the reception, my father gave a speech that brought me to tears. "Sophia has always been the heart of our family," he declared, his voice thick with emotion, "even when we didn't appreciate her properly. She's kind, generous, hardworking, and loyal to a fault. Daniel, you're not just marrying a wonderful woman. You're marrying someone who will move heaven and earth for the people she loves. I just hope you never take that for granted the way some of us have." It was his public acknowledgement of the years of imbalance, and it meant everything to me. Even Eleanor managed to say something appropriate during her brief remarks. "Sophia, I'm sorry it took me so long to see what an amazing daughter I have. I hope you and Daniel build a beautiful life together." It wasn't a complete repair of our relationship, but it was progress. The most important moment of the day, though, came during our first dance. As Daniel and I swayed to the music in front of all the people who truly cared about us, I realized that I felt something I'd never felt before at a family gathering. Completely, genuinely happy. No regrets, Daniel whispered in my ear. None, I said, and I meant it completely. The months that followed were a revelation. Marriage to Daniel was everything I'd hoped it would be and more. We bought a house together, using the money I'd been able to save once I stopped subsidizing my family's lifestyle. We traveled. We entertained friends. We built traditions that were ours alone. My career flourished in ways I'd never imagined possible. Without the constant emotional drain of family drama, I had energy to invest in my work that I'd never had before. I led successful campaigns, built strong relationships with clients, and earned the promotion my boss had hinted at. The girl who had been called useless was now running her own department. Some family relationships continued to improve gradually. My father and I developed a genuine friendship, talking regularly about everything from work to books to his new hobby of woodworking. Julian made real efforts to be present in my life, calling to check in and even asking for my advice on personal matters. My grandmother, Agnes, became one of my closest confidants, someone I could talk to about anything without fear of judgment. My relationship with Eleanor remained complicated but functional. She still struggled with her tendency to criticize, but she caught herself more often and made real efforts to be supportive. When I told her I was considering going back to school for an MBA, she surprised me by saying, "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity. You'd be excellent at that." It wasn't the enthusiastic, unreserved support I might have gotten from Julian or Charlotte, but it was respectful and encouraging, which was more than I'd ever expected from her. Charlotte and I found a cordial but distant equilibrium. We were polite at family gatherings and exchanged pleasantries, but we never developed the close relationship I'd hoped for in childhood. That was okay, though. I'd learned that not all family relationships can be fixed, and that's not necessarily a reflection of personal failure. The most profound change was internal. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't constantly seeking approval or trying to prove my worth. I knew who I was, what I'd accomplished, and what I brought to my relationships. Daniel's unwavering love and respect had shown me what it felt like to be valued for who I truly was, and I'd learned to value myself the same way. One evening, almost a year after our wedding, Daniel and I were having dinner when my phone rang. It was Eleanor, which wasn't unusual by then, but something in her voice was different. "Sophia, I need to tell you something," she said. "Your father and I were at the grocery store today, and I ran into Mrs. Henderson from down the street. She was asking about you, and I found myself telling her about your promotion and your new house and how proud I am of you. And then I realized, I don't think I've ever actually told you that." "Told me what, Mom?" "That I'm proud of you. That I've always been proud of you, even when I was too stubborn or too focused on what I thought success should look like to admit it. You're an incredible woman, Sophia. You're kind and strong and successful and generous, and I'm sorry it took me so long to say that out loud." It was the conversation I'd been waiting for my entire life, and it came at a time when I no longer needed it to feel complete. But that made it even more meaningful, because it felt genuine rather than desperate. "Thank you, Mom," I said, a soft warmth spreading through me. "That means a lot." "I love you, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I should have been saying that more often, too. I love you too, Mom." After I hung up, Daniel looked at me with a gentle smile. "How does it feel?" "Good," I said, and I was surprised to realize I meant it. "It feels really good, but also, I think I would have been okay either way. And that was the real victory. Not that my family had finally learned to treat me with respect, though that was wonderful. The real victory was that I'd learned to respect myself enough to demand better treatment, and to build a life that didn't depend on their approval for my happiness. I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and for others, is to stop accepting unacceptable behavior. I'd learned that financial independence and emotional independence go hand in hand. Most importantly, I'd learned that the family you choose can be just as important as the family you're born into, and that surrounding yourself with people who see your worth doesn't make you selfish. It makes you whole. The little girl who had spent her childhood trying to earn love had grown into a woman who knew she was worthy of love just as she was. And that made all the difference in the world. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your support for granted? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life narratives about standing up for yourself and finding your worth. Share this with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve to be treated with respect, regardless of family dynamics. Remember, you teach people how to treat you, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop accepting less than you deserve. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps someone else find the courage to speak their truth. Wishing you all the strength to know your worth and the courage to demand the respect you deserve.